All right, let's stay with the situation in Gaza. The Minister, Naledi Pandor, saying that she has asked the Police Minister, Bheki to beef up her security and that of her family. It follows the International Court of Justice's ruling on South Africa's genocidal intent case against Israel. The minister saying she has been targeted on social media, further accusing the Israeli intelligence of trying to intimidate her. But what's the truth to all of this? Let's find out from senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies. Willem Els joins us now to unpack these claims. Mr. Els, thank you very much for your time. I want to pick up on exactly what the Minister of International Relations said, and this was on the sidelines of the State of the Nation speech on Thursday night. I want to quote her words directly. She said, I felt it would be better if we had extra security, but what I'm more concerned about is my family, because in some social media messages, my children are mentioned and so on. And I'm going to jump to the last bit. The Israeli agents, the intelligence services, this is how they behave, and they seek to intimidate you, so we must not be intimidated. What do you make of those comments from Minister Pandor? It does suggest that, at least on social media, there is something there, but as to how credible it would be, would it justify the involvement of the police minister?
Well, in the first place, good evening to you. And the moment your family is being targeted, of course, that becomes a different ballgame. And then, of course, you would try to up the security of your family and also take precautions to do so in this case of the minister. What we do not know is what the information is that the minister has. You know, normally in a situation like this, we have our intelligence services, our foreign service, but as well as our national service, but we also have the police and the hawks that will normally, especially your crimes against the state division or section, that will investigate these type of things. They will gather intelligence, they will gather evidence, and based on that evidence, they will then normally draw up a plan of action. So we do not know if these were only messages on social media or whether there is really substance to the claim of the minister. That will also obviously come out when there is an in-depth investigation. We should see that against the backdrop of, we got more or less 200 VIPs in South Africa that are receiving protection, and the minister is one of them. And that last year it cost the taxpayer almost 3.8 billion rand. So they should have the resources to do so if they want to up it, And just on the sideline to compare that with the budget of the Hawks, that is almost not even 60% of the VI protection unit, and those are the guys that actually have to investigate this type of crimes now. So we see there's a lot of imbalances here. But on the other hand, the safety and security of our VIPs is important, but it should be investigated. It also should be planned for with solid intelligence and investigations.
The minister's comments, Willem Els, they come on the back of what the president, and I think at that time he was speaking in his capacity as ANC leader. If you recall, he mentioned the word regime change on the back of the ICJ efforts by the government. So he says regime change, we should not be asleep to that. But he also says there could be possible interference in the country's political space. We have an election that is coming up. And I suppose all of these messages, they are pointing to something. Is there really much to be worried about when it comes to the Israeli intelligence agencies?
Well, I think we should look at that against the backdrop of what happened 2.5 years ago with the unrest situation, where our intelligence services proved less than adequate to really be up to the task to do that. We know in the meantime they started to revamp and to update, but we also know that they are far lacking at this stage, and they are not where they're supposed to be or where they really want to be. So it's against that backdrop where you basically have a state president that is working blind. Because your intelligence, good and credible and timeless intelligence, those are the information and the tools that inform a state president to make proactive as well as reactive decisions in terms of governance and safety, etc., etc. So yes, there seems to be an uneasiness within government circle, especially within the party, if the minister or if the president spoke on behalf of the party. We also know that when the ANC and also the South African government decided to embark on this mission, where they took on some of the major powers in the ICJ, there will be repercussions. And, so whenever you do that, it is always supposed to be a calculated risk that you have to do your mathematics, you have to look at the pros and the cons, what your objectives are, but also you have to prepare for any possible consequences. Now, if we look at the history of the Israeli intelligence service, we also know that they are very effective. They proved to be very effective over a number of years in working. But as we say, we don't see any evidence, or we haven't seen any hard evidence that there is a risk from their side at this stage.
The difficulty for ordinary South Africans like me, Willem Els, is that you are going to have to weigh exactly what you have just said, that we will need to be presented with hard evidence that suggests that there is going to be a possible counter-offensive by the Israelis on the back of the ICJ case. But how much of that is also conspiracy theory? Because that should not be lost on us, particularly in an election year.
You just mentioned it now, what I wanted to mention next. Everything should be seen against the backdrop of the global repositioning and a realignment in the United Nations, where you've got your BRICS-aligned countries, you've got your more Western-aligned countries, etc., etc., and that created a very clear divide, with South Africa fairly and squarely within the ranks of China, the Soviet Union, Iran, and some of the other countries, the non-aligned countries. And your challenge that you have now is the battle lines have been drawn on many levels. And we can also see that that might be one of the objectives when South Africa took on this case. We saw that many of those countries gave them their backing as well. So South Africa stuck its neck out. It made a stance. It went to the International Criminal Court, Court of Justice. And then, they did not get really what they wanted for. They wanted the immediate ceasefire and so on. But they got two things that I think is very important. On the one hand, they got a investigation going. They also got the court instructing Israel to refrain from acts of genocide. But what they did not bargain for is that they also got a ruling that the hostages must be released. So there's always two kinds of a coin. Doesn't matter from which side you are looking at.
Yeah.
So for us, there's a lot of rhetoric in this, a lot of things that we don't know behind the scenes what is going on. That on the one hand, and secondly, you've got the election coming up. The election is upon us. We know that the ruling party is not expected to do as well as it would have liked to do. We also know that it might be a strategy of them to bring your certain groupings of religious groups closer to them by these actions, especially in provinces where they are not the ruling party. So all of that, against that backdrop, we have to look what is rhetoric, what is fact, and also what is part of your political play.
Final question to you, and very briefly, Willem. You mentioned the 2021 July unrest, and all the reports I've seen thus far, they say the same thing, that our intelligence services, including the security apparatus, was simply flat-footed. How alert is our intelligence services at a time like this?
At this stage, they are still restructuring. We know that the GLAP, the new amended Intelligence Act, is before Parliament. It's now up for public comment. They try to bring some things together. They try to revamp them. But we have to ask us today the question, have we allowed it to go too far that we just simply have to close them down and start from the front because it is just too compromised? That we don't know. We saw all the different, the Mari Commission, we saw the Zondo Commission's recommendations, and that were not favorable towards our intelligence fraternity. So yes, with the new legislation that they were instructed to draw up, and that will address most of these challenges. It will all come out in the washing whether they will be able to rejuvenate themselves and become the intelligence service that South Africa needs, or the compromised service that it has been for the past 10 years.
Willem Els is with the Institute for Security Studies. Thank you very much for your time.